Welcome back to the Caldwell Account, folks. We continue to talk about the U.S. presidential race, which is already underway in advance of the November 2012 election. And the big news being that former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich is cannonballed into the presidential pool. To talk about this, we are joined from Washington, D.C. by the senior political analyst for Washington Examiner, a columnist, the co-author of the Almanac of American Politics. He is Michael Barone, and he is, in the opinion of this program, the most comprehensive and intelligent political thinker in America. Mr. Barone, thanks for being with us.
Well, it's nice to be with you, and if I justify that description, it may be because I grew up north of Canada.
We didn't know there was a north of Canada, but as I was saying to you...
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, right, because of the Grand Trunk.
Directly north of Windsor, Ontario.
That's great. Well, as I said, I do maintain what we say on this program. We do think you are, with the Almanac and with your writings and your comprehensive knowledge of the polls and the counties and everything in the United States, the smartest guy in American politics. I told you that once at Minneapolis, St. Paul at the Republican Convention. You said to me, if I think that, then I'm the dumbest kid in Minnesota, but in any case, we're grateful to have you. Sir, what's your take?
Thank you very much.
What's your take on Newt Gingrich entering the presidential race?
Well, Newt Gingrich is, you know, a wonderful idea guy. He's, you know, he has projects like he writes counterfactual histories at the beginning of World War I and the Civil War and things like that. He led Republicans to a victory in the House of Representatives, winning a majority for the first time in 40 years that nobody else ever did. I'm not sure he has a presidential temperament. I think that in part Newt is going because of the calendar. He's 67 years old, and this time 4 years from now he'll be 71, and I think he figures this is a chance to do it, and he may not have another one again, so he's going to give it a try, going to try to supply new ideas and capture people's imaginations, as he succeeded in doing sometimes in the past.
Beware an old man in a hurry, as the expression goes, and if this is indeed Newt's last chance, you can see why he'd try. But you mentioned ideas, sir, and I don't think anyone on either side of the political aisle doubts that when it comes to ideas, there's maybe nobody in American public life who has more of them more often, and oftentimes good ideas, than Newt Gingrich.
Well, that's right. If it's everything from space travel to what we should do about education to the treatment of animals, you know, he's seen ahead and he's actually had some record of dealing with issues. As Speaker of the House of Representatives, he pushed through the welfare reform that helped to really change things in America. He picked up on what was going on in the States and said, look, let's help people find work, spend some money on that rather than spending money on keeping them idle. He reached a balanced budget agreement with the Clinton administration in 1997 that put us on the trajectory towards a balanced federal budget and set up a Medicare commission, which really had the potential to make major reforms in Medicare 10 years ago. It didn't quite succeed in that. President Bill Clinton didn't go along because he was beholden perhaps to the left wing of the Democratic Party. But Newt Gingrich was not only a conceiver of ideas, but a guy who did push some of them to fruition. So while many of us who admire him wonder if he really has a presidential temperament, we do have to admit that he has shown the capacity to put ideas into practice, make them into public policy that becomes successful and accepted by the American people.
And translating that to, you know, an understanding among the electorate is one of the challenges, is it not, that Speaker Gingrich faces? Because when people think of him, I think often they think of, you know, the fights with Bill Clinton, the government shutdown, or the leaving of office in a huff in, you know, 1999, and they don't realize that while he was in office, while he was the Speaker of the House, well, for one thing, he didn't become Speaker for no reason. It's because he was effective, and also when he was there, he did a lot of very good things for which he might not have gotten credit.
Well, I remember sitting in the House members' dining room with Newt Gingrich back in the 1980s, and he was predicting every election cycle the Republicans were going to win a majority in the House. They didn't for several election cycles, but they finally did, and he had the reasons down. He understood that Republicans had the capacity to win in districts in the South, which had voted Democratic. He understood that they had the capacity to win in blue-collar districts and the kind of issues and ways of talking about issues that would work there. So Newt Gingrich was really ahead of the curve, and he was proved to be correct on those things. So I don't discount him at all. He's a very serious guy in many ways. And, you know, people say that he lost the budget struggle with Bill Clinton. Well, I think that's only a partial view. Clinton indeed was reelected in 1996 after that cycle, but the Republicans lost only 9 seats in the House of Representatives. They maintained control. In the 1998 election, after which Gingrich was forced out, they only lost 5 seats. They still maintained a majority. Losing 9 seats and losing 5 seats is not great, but if you hold on your majority, it's good. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Speaker, led her party to losing 63 seats. Now that is what I call a political disaster. By my counting, and I don't know that you have to be the smartest man in North America for this, 63 is a larger number than 9, it's a larger number than 5, and it's a larger number than 9 and 5 put together.
Indeed, and although I would say that former Speaker Nancy Pelosi appearing on a presidential ballot is probably a horseman of the apocalypse, so I don't even know if you need to make the comparison, but let me ask you...
Well, she's 3 years older than Newt Gingrich.
Oh, well, and as though that's the only reason why we wouldn't want her with the nuclear football, but if I can ask you about the rest of the field. You have written that there is no front runner at the moment in the Republican field for president, and you've said that folks who say Mitt Romney, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, is the front runner, aren't really looking at the numbers. When you look at the rest of the Republican field, what do you see, sir?
Well, I see some candidates who have significant record in government, but aren't well known to the public. I mean, Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota falls in that category, and I think Governor Mitch Daniels of Indiana would do so as well should he decide to run, and I think he's going to reach a decision in a couple of weeks. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm convinced he's going to run. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I tend to think he won't. So we'll see how that is resolved. You know, Mitch Daniels was not only governor of Indiana, he was head of the Office of Management and Budget, and that's a job and a position in which you really get to know a lot about the federal government, all the different branches of it, where the money goes, how it operates, what programs are effective. We have terrific professional career staff, nonpartisan staff in the Office of Management and Budget, and I think you know, they help directors of both parties learn a lot about government. So Mitch Daniels has some important credentials. I think Tim Pawlenty does. I think some of the other candidates arguably do. You know, the Republican that has perhaps the best record of the past decade as a governor is not going to run. That's former Governor Jeb Bush of Florida, for reasons that should be fairly obvious. But you know, I think there is some talent in that field, and I don't think that it's pathetic. But look, we have lots of polls in the United States. None of the candidates are getting more than 20% in those polls, maybe 21%. Those that are leading are those that ran last time, Mike Huckabee and Mitt Romney. Neither of them is getting as much as 20% in almost every poll. And you know, they lost the nomination in 2008 to a candidate, John McCain, whose basic strategy consisted of waiting for the other candidates' strategies to fail. Now, when I was a political consultant, that was not a strategy that I ever advised clients to follow, because they'd say, how come you're paying me, you know, we're paying you a consulting fee for telling us to just sit around and wait for the other guy to misfire. But the fact is they did.
Yeah, and that's
against weak opposition. Mitt Romney was not able to be nominated last time, and neither was Mike Huckabee. They have some name identification advantage, but I think this is very much an open field race in an era of what I've called open field politics, where at the moment voters don't really know very much about these candidates. I mean, they will know, you know, 100 things about these candidates by the time they vote. Currently, they know about 12 things about Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee, and about 2 things about Tim Pawlenty and Mitch Daniels.
Yeah, and look, John McCain's strategy in 2008 worked out extremely well for Barack Obama, and we spoke to former Governor Jeb Bush on this program not long ago. We asked him about running for president. Of course, you know, he's consistently said he's not going to run, and, you know, obvious reasons. I had some guy write to me saying he wouldn't listen to another Bush if it was burning, but I did say to Governor Bush, I think the Republican Party is not going to let it go, because I really think, like you said, a lot of people think he'd be the strongest choice. Michael Barone, please stay with us. We're going to take a break. We'll be back to ask you about Canada. Return to us, please, on the Caldwell Account. Welcome back to the Caldwell Account, folks. We've been talking a lot about U.S. presidential politics. We're going to talk now about Canada and the conservative majority government that's just been elected. And to help us kick this around, we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Michael Barone. He's the senior political analyst and a columnist at the Washington Examiner. He's the co-author of the Almanac of American Politics, and in the view of this program, he is the most perspicacious political thinker in America. Thank you, sir, for being with us.
Well, very nice to be with you in Canada.
Now, you've written an excellent piece here. Well, all your pieces are excellent. That's why you're Michael Barone. What the Republican Party can learn from Canada's conservatives. You grew up, as you say, north of Canada in Detroit, and you have studied
in Detroit, Michigan.
That's right, and you've studied our election, the Conservatives' victory. What do you see in that?
Well, I see, I see a rousing re-election or election with an absolute majority for Stephen Harper. I see two huge changes in Canadian politics. The evaporation, as it were, of the Bloc Québécois suggests to me that the oomph has gone from the Quebec separatist movement. Now, perhaps I'm overestimating from that datum, but it seems like this is not, just the kind of rousing cause that it has been in much of the time since Charles de Gaulle came here and said, "Vive le Québec libre," in downtown Montreal. So that I see the Liberal Party, which has been the dominant party in Canada since the first federation election, I guess in 1867, finishing in third place and really reduced to a kind of rump of, Central Toronto with the kind of media mavens you have there, Anglophone Montreal, some of the maritime provinces, but just a handful of districts across the country. I think the lessons for American Republicans here, number one is don't be afraid of talking about cutting government spending and about paring down government. I know that you in Canada have had experience with substantial cuts administered by a Liberal government initially in the 1990s. And life has gone on. That government was returned to office later, but of course now is in the party's in sad shape. Mr. Harper's victory shows that the political science, conventional wisdom of mid-century, mid-20th century was voters want government to send them more money, take it away from the rich, or get your hands on it, borrow it, whatever, and give it to ordinary voters. I think that hasn't been a good guide to politics in the United States for a long time, and obviously it's not a good guide to politics in Canada at this point, at least the majority politics. So I think that's one big lesson for the Republicans. The other lesson that I see, and something I need to learn more about, is the immigrant vote. I mean, as I understand it, in past elections in the 1990s, Liberals and perhaps NDP in British Columbia were in parts of Ontario were getting a lot of votes from immigrants, and were carrying those districts. In this election, obviously, it was very different. And if you look at the returns, as I understand it, from Brampton, Mississauga, or indeed in Etobicoke Lakeshore, the heavy with immigrants district of the Liberal Party leader Michael Ignatieff, what you see is the Conservatives winning elections there. And I gather they ran, some ads with people of Chinese, South Asian origin, speaking in their native languages. I suspect they did some other things that I don't know about and would like to learn more about to make a connection with immigrants. What it tells me is you don't have to tell these people we're just going to shovel more money at you. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to say we're going to let your relatives in illegally, who violated the law, we're going to let them in anyway. What it says is that you have to establish a connection with them. You have to say, we like you, we understand you, we include people who share your background, they're part of our party, we respect you, we're your friends, and we hope you'll be our friends. And they seem to have been friends of the Conservative Party in this election.
And how? I mean, and this program generally eschews identity politics, but I don't think it's the same thing to say, people you want to reach out to, appreciate being reached out to in their own language, people from their own background, and demonstrably it works. Michael Barone, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Washington Examiner, Almanac of American Politics, great political thinker. All the best to you, sir, and thanks again for being with us.
Delight to be with you. Hope we can do it again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.